This story was told to me by Ivan Kuznetsov, a forester from the village of Bolshaya Sumka, which stands on the very edge of the Kuznetsk Taiga, where all roads end and the kingdom of ancient cedars and larches begins. I recorded this story in the damp autumn of 1995, when Ivan Petrovich, already past 60, could still stand on his own feet, though he no longer went beyond the village outskirts. We sat in his small log house, drinking strong tea with lingonberry jam, while a blizzard howled outside, as if the taiga itself was displeased that its secrets were being brought into the light. The room was warm, close, filled with the smell of smoke and pine, and the old man's voice was low and steady, like the creak of an old tree in the wind. This story began in 1985. Back then, Ivan Kuznetsov was still a strong man, though he had already passed his 50th year. He worked as a forester at the distant cordon, 15 kilometers from the village, at the very foot of the Gray Hill. The cordon had been built back in Soviet times, then abandoned, then brought back to life. They kept Ivan Petrovich there on a modest salary, but with housing and firewood. He lived there almost alone. Only once a week did the supply worker Nikolai come by in an old, battered UAZ truck, bringing food and taking away requests for tools and building materials. Nikolai was a young man, around 35, stocky, dark-haired, with an easy disposition. He talked a lot, laughed loudly, and Ivan Petrovich always looked forward to his arrival. Because in the taiga, you see, the silence is such that you begin to hear your own thoughts too clearly. And that is not always pleasant, especially at night. When the moon hung over the black silhouettes of the larches, when an owl cried somewhere in the distance, when the wind stirred the treetops, and it seemed the taiga was speaking to itself in a language beyond human understanding. Ivan Petrovich would step onto the porch, light a cigarette, look at the stars, so many of them here that the sky seemed scattered with diamond dust, and think, here he lives, alone in this sea of trees, and how small a person really is, how insignificant before the face of this eternal, indifferent nature. In that same year, 1985, she appeared. Lida Ivanova, a geologist by training, about 55 years old, maybe a little more, arrived in Bolshaya Sumka from Novosibirsk and rented a corner from Aunt Nadja, the woman who ran the village's only shop. Lida Ivanova's arrival did not go unnoticed. Bolshaya Sumka was a place where everyone knew everyone, where any news spread through every house in a matter of hours. Aunt Nadia, a talkative and curious woman, immediately began questioning the new lodger. Where from? Why? For how long? But Lida Ivanova answered briefly, reluctantly. She said she had come to study the geological structure of the region, that she was working on scientific research, that she would stay for several months, maybe longer. And people talked. Some said, "A geologist? Strange. A woman alone, not young. Why would she come to such a backwater? Probably hiding from someone." Others disagreed. Scholars are like that. They need silence for their work. Maybe she really is looking for something interesting. But most just shrugged. She came and she came. She'll live a while and leave, like everyone else. Lida Ivanova was an unusual woman. Not tall, stocky, with short dark hair already heavily streaked with gray. Her face was stern, high cheekboned, her eyes gray, heavy, penetrating. She dressed simply, a forest green jacket, military-style trousers, heavy boots. On her left wrist she always wore a copper bracelet with 3 cloudy stones, red, green, and black. Many people noticed that bracelet. Aunt Nadja said she saw it when Lida Ivanova moved in. The bracelet was massive, crudely made, the stones set in a tarnished frame. The stones themselves, the size of peas, looked like opals or simple river pebbles. But there was something strange about them. They did not reflect light, but absorbed it. Aunt Nadja asked, "What is that bracelet? Where did it come from?" Lida Ivanova answered curtly, "A family heirloom, very old," and said nothing more. She spoke little in general, but when she spoke, her words were precise and weighty. The locals were wary of her at first. A stranger coming to a remote place, a woman alone, without family, that always raised questions. But Lida bothered no one, interfered with no one, only studied her maps. Old maps from before the revolution. Soviet maps, topographic, geological. And one strange map on thick oiled paper with faded symbols that looked less like topography and more like sorcerer's script. That map she showed to no one, only examined it under her lamp. She hung the maps all over the room, marking them, drawing lines, writing in a thick, leather-bound notebook. "What are you looking for?" Aunt Nadja asked once, unable to contain herself. "Gold?" Lida Ivanova looked up at her, smiled faintly. "Not gold. Roads." "What roads? We only have one road to the district center. Everyone knows that." "Not those roads. Old ones, forgotten ones, the ones not on maps." Aunt Nadja did not understand, but she did not press further. For the first 2 weeks, Lida Ivanova hardly left her room, only to the shop for food and once she went to the village library, which was housed in a single room of the old community center. The librarian, Zoya Petrovna, an elderly and curious woman, later said that Lida had asked about old books, whether there was anything on the history of the region, on the Evenks who used to roam here, on local legends. Then she started going for walks. She walked around the village outskirts, along the river, into the forest. She took a backpack, a compass, a notebook. She returned by evening, tired but satisfied. Aunt Nadja would ask where she had been. Lida would answer vaguely, surveying the terrain, studying the relief. One day, she went to Nikolai. He was just receiving his delivery assignment at the forestry office and asked if she could ride with him to the distant cordon. She was interested, she said, in the old trails in those parts and wanted to see the landscape. Nikolai, a good-natured fellow, agreed without hesitation. And so Lida came to the cordon for the first time and met Ivan Kuznetsov. Ivan Petrovich remembered that encounter very clearly. It was late September. The taiga was already preparing for winter. The leaves on the birches had turned yellow. The cedars stood dark green, almost black in the overcast light. The air was cold, smelling of moss and the tang of rotting needles. The sky was overcast with gray clouds, from which a fine drizzle fell. Not even rain, but a watery dust that settled on everything. When the UAZ truck rolled up to the cordon, Ivan Petrovich came out to meet them, as usual. Nikolai jumped out first, cheerful as always, and then Lida stepped out sedately. She looked around with a long, searching gaze. She looked at the forest, at the distant mountains, at the sky where clouds were gathering. Then she looked at Ivan Petrovich and nodded, as if greeting him, though she spoke no word. He nodded back. Nikolai began unloading the supplies, while Lida took a map from her backpack, spread it on the UAZ's hood, and began to study it. Ivan Petrovich came over to look. The map was old, yellowed, with faded inscriptions. He recognized the area, but the map was strange. On it were marked trails he did not know, trails that did not follow the modern roads, but cut straight across, as if someone had drawn lines through the taiga, ignoring the terrain. "Where did you get this map?" asked Ivan Petrovich. "From an archive, a pre-revolutionary topographic expedition, 1887. They didn't just survey land, they recorded the trails used by the locals." "The Evenks," Ivan Petrovich said. "Not only them. There are older trails, the ones they called spirit roads." Ivan Petrovich chuckled. He didn't particularly believe in spirits, though he knew the taiga well. How many years he had lived here. That many he had noticed. There are places in the taiga you don't want to enter. Somewhere, for no reason, you feel uneasy. Somewhere, birds do not sing. Somewhere, trees grow twisted, as if shying away from something. The old people in the village knew such places. They avoided them, saying, "There's a master there. Do not go. Do not disturb." But Lida Ivanova spoke seriously, without a trace of a smile. "I've been studying these trails for many years, gathering them bit by bit. They are shorter than ordinary roads, much shorter, and I want to find them." Nikolai, listening, laughed. "Lida Ivanovna, what short trails! The taiga is the taiga. The road goes where it goes because you can't get through any other way." "You can," she said, "if you know how to fold the map." And then she did something strange. She took the map and began to fold it. Not just folding it in half, but in a special way, like an accordion, threading a leather strap through holes she had pierced. When she finished, the map had become a multi-layered figure, and Ivan Petrovitch saw that lines which had been far apart were now almost touching. "Space can be folded," Lida Ivanova said. "Not physically, of course, but there are places where it is already folded, where distances are not what they seem. The old people knew these places, walked them. Then the knowledge was lost, but the maps remained." Nikolai shook his head, still smiling. "You're a strange one, Lida." But she did not go back. She asked to stay at the cordon for a couple of days. Those 2 days at the cordon were etched in Ivan Petrovitch's memory by the strangeness that hung in the air. Lida hardly slept at all. At night she sat over her maps, comparing them with her compass, making calculations in her notebook. Her compass was unusual, old, brass, with engravings on the lid. Ivan Petrovitch asked where she had gotten it. She said it was also a family heirloom. Her grandfather had been a geologist exploring Siberia before the revolution. But the strangest thing was that the compass did not point where ordinary compasses did. Ivan Petrovitch noticed this by chance. When Lida Ivanova left the compass on the table, he picked it up and opened the lid. The needle swayed slowly and pointed not due north, but slightly to one side. He turned the compass. The needle wobbled, then settled again in the same position, a few degrees west. When Lida returned, he asked about it. She looked at the compass and nodded. "It does not point to magnetic north. It points to the direction of power. There are lines in the earth, invisible, but existing. Lines of energy. The ancients called them different names: dragon's veins, spirit paths. They run across the entire planet, intersecting at certain points. At those points are places of power. This compass is tuned to those lines. During the day, Lida Ivanova went into the taiga. She took the old compass, a coil of rope, a knife, and always wore her bracelet. Ivan Petrovitch asked if it was dangerous for her to go alone. She just shook her head. I know the taiga. I feel it. And indeed, she always returned exactly by evening, without a scratch, without any sign of fatigue. More than that, with every trip into the forest, she seemed to come alive. Her eyes sparkled. A flush appeared on her cheeks. Her movements became lighter, more confident. Ivan Petrovitch even thought then that the taiga suited her, that she belonged here. On the first evening, as they sat in the small room of the cordon, an iron stove glowing, wood crackling, Lida told him about her discovery. She had found the place, the very place she had been seeking. A clearing, 7 kilometers from the cordon, where a huge boulder stood. Ivan Petrovitch knew that place, had heard of it. The old people in the village called the boulder the Iron Guardian. They said it was unclean there, that it was better not to go. That's the border, Lida Ivanova said. The intersection point of the lines. There, the compass goes haywire. I measured the magnetic field, a strong anomaly. And the energy is special. I can feel it on my skin. And what are you going to do there? Asked Ivan Petrovitch. Open the passage. The trail begins there. You just need to know how to enter. On the second evening, when it grew dark, Lida began to speak, at length, quietly, almost monotonously. And Ivan Petrovitch listened, because there was something mesmerizing in her words. She told him that she had spent her whole life searching for what others consider myth. Short roads, not physically short, but because space there is different, curved, folded. She spoke of places of power, points where the invisible lines of the earth converge, of ancient shamans who could see those lines and walk them. That once people knew far more about the nature of the world than they know now. There is an old legend, Lida said, staring into the fire. An old man in the Altai foothills told it to me 20 years ago. He said his grandfather told a story about a hunter. That hunter was brave but careless. One day he went into the taiga, to the place where no one was supposed to go. The old people said a master lives there, an ancient spirit who does not love people. But the hunter did not listen. He chased a deer deep into the forest. Suddenly, the trees parted, and he came into a clearing. In the clearing stood a boulder, and by the boulder sat a woman, beautiful, young, dressed in white. Her hair was long, black as pitch, reaching to the ground. The hunter stopped, frightened. He understood. This was not a person. The woman beckoned him, called to him in a voice that made his blood run cold. The hunter nearly gave in. He almost stepped forward. But then he remembered what his grandfather had taught him. If you meet a spirit, do not answer. Do not take anything. Turn away and leave. So he did. He turned and walked away. He heard laughter behind him, angry, offended, but he did not look back. He walked for a long time, his legs nearly giving out, but he did not look back. And suddenly, he found himself on a familiar trail, right near his home. Only minutes had passed, they say, but he had covered 20 kilometers. Then the hunter understood. The trail was indeed short, but the price was your soul. The spirit maiden owned that trail, and whoever went to her, she took forever. Ivan Petrovich listened, feeling goosebumps run down his spine. The story was frightening, but also alluring. "And you believe in that?" he asked. "I believe," Lida Ivanovna nodded, "because I have seen it. Not here, in another place, on the Alden River. I found the first trail there. I walked it and understood. The legends are true, just distorted. There are no spirit maidens, no masters with human faces. But there is something else. Entities, energies, invisible but real. They guard the trails, and they sense who walks them. I've found 3 such trails," she continued. "One on the Aldan, one in Khakassia, and one here, nearby. But this trail is the oldest. If my calculations are correct, you could reach Lake Baikal in 1 day along it. By the ordinary road, that's a week's journey." "And what of it?" asked Ivan Petrovich. "If you get there faster, so what?" Lida looked at him for a long time, piercingly. "Because on those trails, there is another world. Not ours. Similar, but not the same. There, the taiga is alive, true. Not the one we see, but the one that existed before us, before people." Ivan Petrovich said nothing. The woman was clearly not in her right mind, or so he thought at the time. But she spoke in such a way that he wanted to believe. 2 weeks passed. Ivan Petrovich almost forgot about Lida and her strange talk. Life went on as usual. He woke early, walked the forest, wrote his observations in a journal, heated the stove, prepared meals, read old newspapers brought by Nikolai. But one night he had a strange, vivid dream, so vivid that in the morning he remembered every detail. He dreamed that he was walking along a narrow, moss-covered trail. The trees around him were enormous, taller than any he had ever seen. Their trunks were covered with strange symbols, circles, spirals, lines. The sky was invisible, only a green half-light and silence. Absolute silence. He walked, and ahead he saw a woman. Her back was to him. She had long hair and a white dress. She turned, and he saw her face. It was Lida, but young, no more than 20. She smiled and beckoned to him. He walked toward her, but no matter how far he walked, she stayed the same distance away. Then, suddenly, she disappeared, dissolved into the air. And in her place lay a bracelet, copper, with 3 stones on the ground. He bent to pick it up and woke up. He woke in a cold sweat, his heart pounding. The dream would not leave his head. From that day on, he began to think more often about Lida Ivanova, about her words, about those trails. And one day, when he had a free day, he decided to go to the boulder himself, to see the place she had talked about. He walked for a long time, nearly 3 hours. The taiga around was ordinary. Cedars, larches, birches, moss underfoot, silence. But the closer he came to the clearing, the stronger a strange feeling grew. Anxiety, unease, as if someone was watching him from behind the trees, following every step. And then he stepped into the clearing, a small, round clearing. In its center stood a boulder, huge, gray, weathered, covered with lichen. From a distance, it really did resemble a seated figure. Ivan Petrovich approached, walked around it. Nothing special, just an ordinary rock. But the feeling did not go away. The anxiety grew. The air felt heavy, pressing. His head swam slightly. He took out his compass. He opened the lid. The needle darted back and forth, unable to settle. A magnetic anomaly, he thought. So, Lida Ivanova had been right. He stood a while longer. He did not want to leave. Something held him there. And then he did something he both regretted and didn't regret. He walked around the boulder 3 times, slowly, counterclockwise, as Lida had done, by her account. Nothing happened. The taiga remained the same. Ivan Petrovich smiled to himself, shook his head, and walked back to the cordon. But from that day on, the dreams came more often. Every night he saw the same trail, the same enormous trees, the same woman. Sometimes she was Lida Ivanova, sometimes someone else, a stranger, but she always beckoned, always called. And he would wake with the feeling that he was missing something, that he needed to go there, into the taiga, to that clearing, and then everything would become clear. Then Nikolai came again, and this time he was not alone. Lida Ivalova sat beside him in the UAZ cab, and her face shone with such triumph that Ivan Petrovich immediately understood. She had found something. "Ivan Petrovich!" Nikolai shouted before he even got out of the truck. "You won't believe what we saw!" Lida stepped out, unhurriedly, confidently. She seemed taller, leaner, younger. Her eyes sparkled. "I found the entrance," she said simply. "The trail begins 7 kilometers from here, at the boulder." Nikolai was excited, speaking in fits and starts. He told how they had driven to the boulder, how Lida had told him to stop, how she had walked around it 3 times, holding her bracelet. Then she walked into the forest, and he followed. "And suddenly the trees became different," Nikolai said. "Enormous cedars, as thick as 3 embraces, their branches drooping to the ground like willows. Larches with spiraling trunks. Birches with bark not white, but silver gray, almost glowing. And the silence, it made your ears ring. No birds, no animals, only the wind in the branches. But the wind was strange, as if something was breathing. We came to a stream, Lida Ivanova said. A small stream, but the water in it was yellow, like amber or molten copper. And hot, Nikolai added. I dipped my hand. My fingers burned. That's the border. Beyond that stream is a different place. You can't just go there. You have to be ready." "Ready for what?" asked Ivan Petrovich. "For a meeting," Lida answered. Nikolai fell silent. Ivan Petrovich looked at him. The young man had gone pale, his hands trembling. "There was something there," Nikolai said quietly. "Beyond the stream, I saw it. A shadow, large, tall, moving between the trees. Not a bear, not a person, something else." Lida Ivanova placed a hand on Nikolai's shoulder. "That is the master of the trail. He appeared because we came with respect. If we had come otherwise, he would not have appeared. He would simply have taken us." Ivan Petrovich's skin crawled. He could see that Lida Ivanova was serious, that Nikolai was not lying. Though his mind whispered delusion, his heart whispered something else. His heart believed. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because I need a witness," Lida Ivanova answered. "Someone I trust. I will go further. In a week, I will cross the stream and follow the trail to the end. And I want you to know, if I do not return, tell them, let people know that the trails exist. And me? Asked Nikolai. You are not ready, she said softly. The taiga will not accept you. You are afraid, and fear is felt there. A week passed in anxious anticipation. Ivan Petrovitch could not settle. He kept thinking about that conversation. He even went to the boulder again, stood in the clearing, looked at the forest, but saw nothing unusual. Ordinary taiga, ordinary trees. But at night, the dreams returned. The same trail, the same trees, the same woman. Only now she was closer. She reached out her hand, and he could almost feel her touch. Cold, but not unpleasant. Beckoning. When Nikolai came again, Lida Ivanova was not with him. Ivan Petrovitch asked where she was. Nikolai answered that she had stayed in the village, preparing, packing her things, writing something. She said she would leave soon, but not when she would return. She's become completely strange, Nikolai said, lowering his voice. Aunt Nadia said that at night Lida Ivanova goes outside, stands under the moon, holds her bracelet in front of her, whispers words. But Ivan Petrovitch felt otherwise. He understood. Lida stood on the threshold of something important. She had found what she had spent her life seeking, and was now preparing to take a step from which there was no return. 3 days later, she appeared on her own. She came walking out of the taiga. Ivan Petrovitch was standing by the cordon when he turned, and there she was, emerging from the forest soundlessly, like a shadow. Lida Ivanova had changed again. Now she looked no more than 30. Her face had smoothed. The gray in her hair had almost vanished. Her eyes shone. She wore the same field clothes, but carried a large backpack and a staff in her hand. The staff was strange, made of black wood, covered with carved symbols that resembled runes. I'm leaving, she said without greeting. Today, now. I came to say goodbye. Where are you going? He asked. To the trail, she answered. To the end. To the very heart of the taiga, where the ancients live, those who remember how the world was made. Will you return? She smiled, a strange smile, both sad and happy. I don't know. Perhaps, but not soon, and not as I am now. What does that mean? It means the trail changes those who walk it. It takes something human and gives something else. I feel it. Each time I step onto the trail, I become less myself and more of it. The taiga, a spirit. I don't know what to call it. Ivan Petrovitch felt a chill, though the day was warm. "Maybe don't go," he said. "Leave it. Go back to the village, to the city. Live like everyone else." Lida shook her head. "I can't. I have searched for this all my life, and now that I have found it, I cannot stop. The trail calls to me. I hear it every night." She stepped toward him, placed her hand on his shoulder. Her hand was cold, like the water in that stream. "Remember me," she said. "And if anyone asks, tell them, say that the trails exist, that the taiga is alive, that it waits for those who are worthy." And she left. She turned and walked into the forest. Ivan Petrovitch watched her until she disappeared between the trees. And it seemed to him that the trees parted before her, letting her through, then closed again, as if she had never been there. 8 years passed. 8 long years, during which much changed. Ivan Petrovitch grew old. His hair became completely gray. His back stooped. The distant cordon was closed, not economically viable. He returned to the village, rented a corner from Aunt Nadia, the same place where Lida had once lived. Aunt Nadia had aged too, but still kept her shop, still loved to talk. The village of Bolshaya Sumka continued its quiet life. People were born and died. Children grew up and left for the cities. Old people spent their days on benches, remembering the past. The taiga stood around, eternal and indifferent. Ivan Petrovitch rarely thought of Lida. Life absorbed him. But sometimes, especially in autumn, when the taiga turned yellow and the air smelled of cold, he thought of her. Was she still alive? Had she found what she sought? Or had she perished somewhere in the taiga, as many had before her, those who went too far and never returned? Nikolai had been gone from the village for a long time, left a year after that incident. People said he had taken to drink, that his family had fallen apart. Ivan Petrovitch understood. Nikolai could not forget what he had seen in the taiga. It had burrowed into him, poisoned him. Fear and curiosity, a deadly mix. And then, 8 years after Lida Ivanova's disappearance, she returned. It was a warm September day. Ivan Petrovitch was walking back from the shop, carrying a bag of bread and canned goods. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. He felt calm, even a little melancholy. When he reached the edge of the village, at the last house, he saw an old UAZ truck, faded, battered, but sturdy. And beside it stood Lida, but not the one who had left 8 years ago. This one looked no more than 20, tall, slender, with long, straight black hair that shone in the sun, gleaming blue-black like a raven's wing. Her skin was swarthy, not from the sun, but from within, as if she had absorbed the colors of the earth, the moss, the bark. Her eyes were yellow, like a bird's, with golden sparks. She wore a long shirt of coarse cloth, belted with a wide leather belt, from which hung a knife in a wooden sheath. On her feet were soft leather boots, handmade. On her left wrist, the same copper bracelet, only now the stones in it glowed with a faint, cold light. Ivan Petrovich stopped dead. The bag slipped from his hands. He stared at her, unable to believe his eyes. "Ivan Petrovich," she said. "Hello. I've returned." Her voice had changed, deeper, softer, but with something in it that made you want to listen and listen. "It's you," he managed. "It's me," she nodded. "And not me. I walked the trail to the end. I saw what people should not see. I met those who have no names, and they gave me a choice: stay there or return. But if I return, then as someone else." She stepped toward him, light, soundless. Ivan Petrovich stepped back involuntarily, feeling a wave of fear. But she stopped. She held out her hand, palm up, a peaceful gesture, calming. "Don't be afraid," she said softly. "I will not harm you. I came for you." "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "For you," she repeated, "and for him." From behind the UAZ, another figure emerged. Ivan Petrovich did not recognize him at first. It was Nikolai, but not the one he had known. Young, strong, with clear eyes and a calm face. His hair was short, his beard neatly trimmed. He dressed simply: shirt, coarse trousers, leather boots. At his belt, an axe and a knife. His eyes held the same golden spark. He smiled broadly, openly. "Hello, old man. Didn't expect to see me?" Ivan Petrovich felt the ground give way beneath him. His head spun. He grabbed a fence post to keep from falling. How? When? 3 years ago, Nikolai answered. I couldn't forget. I drank, trying to erase the memory. It didn't work. Every night I dreamed of that trail, that forest. I dreamed of Lida Ivanovna. She was calling me, said the trail was waiting. I thought I was going mad. I abandoned my family, abandoned my work, wandered, slept wherever I could. And when I hit rock bottom, when I thought it was the end, she came. Nikolai looked at Lida Ivanovna with such gratitude, such adoration, that Ivan Petrovich felt a pang of envy. She found me in that flophouse, sat down on the cot next to me, and said, "Are you ready?" I didn't even ask, ready for what? I just nodded. And we set out. across all of Siberia, on foot. We walked for a long time, months. Time flows differently there. We reached the trail, crossed the stream, and I saw. He fell silent, his eyes clouding, as if he were seeing it again. "What?" Ivan Petrovitch asked, unable to bear it. "Everything," Nikolai breathed. "The real taiga, alive. Trees that think, beasts that speak, spirits that do not hide. They walk beside you. Places where time has stopped or flows backward. I can't explain it in words. You have to see it, feel it, live it." Lida Ivanova approached Ivan Petrovitch, stood very close. He smelled the taiga on her, pine needles, moss, something ancient and mighty. She radiated warmth, not human warmth, but something else. "You are the last," she said quietly, "of those who know. You saw the beginning. You heard my words. You went to the Iron Guardian. You felt the call. Now the trail calls to you too. Do you want to go?" Ivan Petrovitch was silent. His thoughts raced. His mind screamed, "Madness! Run! Call for help! These are not people standing before you, but something else, dangerous, alien." But his heart whispered, quietly but clearly. It whispered, yes. He thought of his life. Over 60 years. What had he done in all that time? He had worked as a forester, lived alone. No family, no children, no real friends. A quiet, unremarkable life. In a year or two, he would die here, in this village. Buried in the local cemetery, a wooden cross would mark his grave. Within 10 years, the cross would rot. The grave would overgrow. No one would remember. But here was something else. Unknown, dangerous, perhaps fatal. But alive, real. He began. But Lida Ivanova interrupted. "There is no age there. Time flows differently. You will be what you are meant to be. The taiga will decide. And if I refuse? Refuse, and you will live out your life here. You will die, and no one will know. The trails will remain a secret. Perhaps that is for the best." Ivan Petrovitch looked at the village. The familiar houses, the crooked fences, the familiar faces in the windows. Aunt Nadia peering from her shop. Grandpa Stepan shuffling to the well. His life, ordinary, simple, understandable. Then he looked at the taiga, which stood beyond the village outskirts. Dark, endless, holding secrets he would never learn if he refused. Then he looked at Lida Ivanova. Her young, radiant face, her yellow eyes. at Nikolai, calm, happy. And he understood. The choice had already been made. He had made it 8 years ago, when he listened to her stories in that small cordon room. All this time, he had been waiting for this moment. "I will go," he said. His voice came out firm, without hesitation. Without hesitation. Lida smiled, took his hand. Her hand was cold, but pleasant, like the coolness of a spring on a hot day. "Then let's go," she said. "The trail is waiting." They got into the UAZ. Nikolai at the wheel, Lida Ivanova beside him, Ivan Petrovich in the back seat. He didn't even think to pack anything, to tell anyone. He just got in and they drove. The engine started with a low rumble, and the truck rolled down the familiar road, past the shop, past the community center, past the last houses. A few people watched them go, but no one called out, no one waved, as if they hadn't noticed. Then they turned onto a dirt track, then onto a barely visible path, then onto no road at all, between the trees. The UAZ bounced over the roots, branches scraping its sides. And then Ivan Petrovich noticed. The trees were beginning to change. At first, subtly, just a little taller, a little darker. Then more distinctly. The cedars grew larger, their trunks thickening, their branches drooping to the ground. The larches twisted into spirals, as if dancing an invisible dance. The birches shimmered silver, their bark gleaming like metal. The ground beneath the wheels had changed, too. No mud, no stones. Something soft, resilient, alive. Moss, not ordinary moss, but thick, bright, glowing green. Ferns as tall as a man grew on both sides of the track. Their leaves stirred slowly, though there was no wind. The air thickened, became dense, heavy. Ivan Petrovich inhaled. The air smelled different. Not just of pine and moss, but of something else. Bitter, spicy, intoxicating. "Don't be afraid," Lida said, without turning around. "This is the border, the threshold. A little further, and we will be on the trail." The UAZ drove deeper into the forest, which grew ever stranger, ever more unreal. Ivan Petrovich saw things he could not explain. A tree whose branches bore not cones, but transparent crystals, shimmering in all colors. A stone that floated in the air, slowly spinning. A stream whose water flowed upward instead of down. They arrived at the familiar place. Ivan Petrovich recognized it at once. The clearing, and in its center, the Iron Guardian. But now the clearing was different. The grass glowed with a soft golden light. And the boulder had changed, no longer just a rock. Now it truly resembled a living figure, a seated woman wrapped in a stone cloak, her face hidden in shadow. And Ivan Petrovitch could have sworn the figure was breathing. They got out of the UAZ. Ivan Petrovitch stepped onto the ground. It was warm, alive, pulsing beneath his feet like a heart. Lida Ivanova approached the boulder, placed her hand on it, bowed her head, as if listening. She stood that way for a minute, then stepped back and nodded. She has allowed it. Let's go. They walked around the boulder 3 times, slowly, counterclockwise. With each circle, something was changing. Then, Lida stopped and pointed ahead. Ivan Petrovitch looked where she was pointing and saw a forest. But not the forest that surrounded the clearing, a different one. It began at the very edge of the clearing, as if it were the border between 2 worlds. Beyond that border, the trees were enormous, ancient, mighty. Cedars 5 arm spans thick, their roots rising from the earth, writhing like snakes. This is the trail, Lida Ivanova said. Behind the trees is a stream, the final border. Crossing it, you cross into another world. There may be no return. Are you sure? Ivan Petrovitch nodded. Words were not needed. They walked. Lida ahead, Nikolai behind her, Ivan Petrovitch last. They stepped over the border and everything changed at once. The silence became absolute. No sound, only the dull pounding of his own heart. The light was dim, greenish, as if under water. The air was thick, viscous. Each breath took effort. The trees stood around, enormous, silent. But Ivan Petrovitch felt they were alive, not just plants, sentient beings. They watched him, studied him, decided whether to let him pass. They came to the stream. It was narrow, about 3 meters across. The water in it was not clear, not black, but yellow, like amber or molten copper. Glossy, oily, flowing slowly, soundlessly. Steam rose from the water. This is the border, Lida Ivanova said. Beyond it, the true trail. There is no going back. Are you ready? Ivan Petrovitch looked at the yellow water. His heart pounded. Fear was there, but also a call, quiet and insistent. I'm ready, he said. Lida Ivanova stepped into the stream first. The water closed over her feet, but she walked as if on solid ground. She reached the other bank. Nikolai followed without hesitation. Then Ivan Petrovitch. He expected cold, pain, but felt only a tingling, light, almost pleasant. 1,000 tiny needles touching his skin. He took a step, another. The water reached his knees, but he did not sink. He walked on a solid bottom. And then he was on the other side. Behind him, the yellow water, which seemed alive, stirring, breathing. And then he saw the forest, the real forest, the original one, as it had been thousands, millions of years ago, before people, before time. Trees as tall as the sky, their crowns merging into a solid dome. Through it pierced thin rays of light, not white, but colored, green, golden, blue. The tree trunks were covered with moss, glowing with a greenish phosphorescent light. From the moss grew mushrooms, enormous, plate-sized, red, blue, purple. Vines hung from the branches, moving slowly, as if breathing. Flowers the size of a human head grew directly on the trunks, emitting a scent, sweet, spicy, intoxicating. And silence, absolute silence. Only the dull pounding of his own heart. "This is the trail," Lida Ivanova said. "Walk carefully. Everything here is alive, and everything remembers." They walked. Ivan Petrovitch did not know how long. Time seemed to have stopped. He saw strange things. A cedar tree with a hollow in its trunk, and in the hollow sat an enormous owl with human eyes. It stared unblinking, and in its gaze was ancient wisdom and deep sorrow. A puddle on whose surface was reflected not the sky, but some other land, with alien mountains and cities of glowing towers. A footprint on the ground, enormous, twice the size of a human foot, with claws. The print was fresh, the dirt around it still crumbling. A bush bearing not berries, but small glowing spheres. Lida stopped, picked one, handed it to Ivan Petrovitch. "Eat it. It will give you strength." He took the sphere, the size of a cherry, transparent, light pulsing inside. He put it in his mouth. It burst, and a taste spread through his body, sweet, bitter, incredibly rich. The taste of the forest, the earth, of life itself. Warmth spread through him, fatigue left, strength returned. And he felt it. They were being watched. From all sides, from behind the trees, from under the roots, from the branches. Sometimes he saw them out of the corner of his eye. Shadows moving between the trees. Tall, thin, almost transparent figures, eyes shining in the darkness, faces like human faces, but not quite, too long, too narrow. Lida walked confidently, as if she knew the way by heart. Nikolai followed her, calm, relaxed. Ivan Petrovitch walked last, and with each step he felt something in him changing. Fatigue left him. Pain that had plagued him for years vanished. His breathing became even, light. His heart beat steadily, powerfully. He raised his hand, looked at it. Wrinkles were smoothing out, skin becoming smooth, young. Fingers that had trembled in the morning were now firm, strong. "What is happening to me?" he asked. "The trail," Lida answered without turning. "It gives and it takes. What does it take? Connection to the past, to who you were." They came to a vast, round clearing. In its center rose a black rock, polished smooth, covered with moving, intertwining figures and symbols. At the foot of the rock sat someone, an enormous figure, 3 meters tall if it stood, wrapped in dark fabric like tree bark. Its head was crowned with massive antlers. There was no face, only blackness, deep, bottomless. But Ivan Petrovitch felt the figure saw him, and from within the hood came a sound, not words, not music, something between all three. And Ivan Petrovitch understood. Go, you are accepted. You are one of us. They walked on, past the master, into the heart of the forest. Ivan Petrovitch felt light, weightless, glowing. He looked at his hands, young, smooth, luminous. They emerged at the edge of a vast panorama, an endless sea of taiga stretching to the horizon, mountains like teeth, a sky so deep that stars shone in daylight. Below, a vast silver lake reflected the sky so perfectly you could not tell one from the other. "The heart of the taiga," Lida Ivanova said softly, "the place where those older than time wait." And they walked down, into the deep, and the taiga closed behind them, leaving no trace. That is all Ivan Kuznetsov told me. And whether it was truth or madness, the taiga keeps its secrets. And sometimes, looking toward the dark forest at night, I think I see a green light burning in its depths. And I hear a call, but I do not go, not yet.